So today first we will do a quick revision of Atma Nirvriti chapter 1 through 5. You can do it as a meditation if you want, with your eyes closed. You can keep your eyes open and do a contemplation if you want. You can write notes if that's your way. Whatever works for you. Yeah, whatever floats your boat is good. Summary means what? This is where experientially you should be today. Yeah. So your self-assessment begins now. Who's assessing you? You yourself have to assess yourself. Ekta is not assessing you. Okay? You are responsible for your own self here. So this is where your experiential understanding should be today. That is the meaning of summary of chapter 1 through 5. There is only the background of consciousness. Some of us see it as background, some of us see it as an infinite void. The words don't matter. Everything arises, plays, and falls within this consciousness. It is like a void. In that void, I see perception of form arise, perception of sound arise, perception of sight arise, perception of smell arise, perception of taste and touch arise and dissolve. Everything arises, plays, and dissolves in it. All these arisings are not different from consciousness. Earlier, when I took a stand as the body and mind, I saw it as hard, solid, physical objects. Now that I have recognized that I am not the body and mind, but the witnessing background, the sense of I am, I have started seeing everything as nothing but consciousness, as a wave in consciousness. It is one single field of consciousness that I have divided into parts. I have divided a whole into parts, and I have done that only by applying labels. The division is apparent. There is no division really happening there. Suppose you see a humongous painting, really huge painting in a museum, and the painting has a zillion things painted over it. It is actually one huge, beautiful painting. But I go and label objects on the painting. Does the painting get divided? No, the division is apparent. It is one single whole. W-H-O-L-E. There is no individual part that can stand apart from that painting. Similarly, there is no individual part in this creation that can stand apart from consciousness. The waking state cannot stand apart from consciousness. The dream state cannot stand apart from consciousness. The deep sleep state cannot stand apart from consciousness. There is no possibility of anything to stand apart or be different from or to be other than consciousness. Consciousness is the only reality. Reality is only consciousness. When I take a stand as the body and mind, I'm assuming that the waking state is the benchmark of reality. And when I take this waking state as the benchmark of reality, I give priority to thought, perception, sensation, and feeling. My reality becomes perception of sight, perception of sound, perception of smell, perception of taste, and perception of touch. The sensations that arise because of the perception of sight, sensation that arises because of the perception of sound, the sensation that arises because of the perception of smell, the sensation that arises because of the perception of touch, the sensation that arises because of the perception of taste. This becomes my reality. Then the thoughts that arise because of the perception of sight, that becomes my reality. The thought that arises because of the perception of smell, that becomes my reality. The thought that arises because of the perception of sound, that becomes my reality. The thought that arises because of the perception of taste, that becomes my reality. The thought that arises because of the perception of touch, that becomes my reality. And that's how I make the waking state real. By dividing the whole into parts. I did it. Nobody outside is responsible. I have divided the whole into parts by these labels. The same applies to feelings that arise because of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Whether it's a pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling. And then my reactions to those feelings. Then the conditioning that develops, the belief system that develops. Then the expectation from that same feeling to give me the same experience again and again. That entire cycle of drama is what I label as the waking state. I divided the whole, WHOLE, into parts. Is there anything else to reality of this waking state other than consciousness really? When I went into perception of touch, all I could find was my awareness. When I went into the perception of taste, of smell, the feelings of anger, the feelings of hatred, the feeling of sorrow, whatever I went into, I found in the end there was no feeler, there was no feeling, there was no sensation. There was only my awareness. everything dissolved into awareness. I was only assuming these arisings which were moving very fast, like a fast moving train. I just assumed them to be my reality. I could not see anything else but these parts that I had now labeled. And that gave me a false idea that the waking state begins from 6 a.m. in the morning and goes till 11 p.m. in the night. Only that is the waking state. But now, after Atma Nirvriti sessions, I examine carefully. Even if I'm taking the stand as the body and mind, I notice something different now. I see that the waking state is not really that continuous 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. assumption that I had. Now I see arisings. They arise, they play, and then they fall. And then there is a gap. And then there is an arising that plays and it falls. And again there is a gap. Even when I take a stand as the mind, I have started noticing, yes, there are gaps. The gaps are not there just between two thoughts, they are there between two perceptions, they are there between two sensations, they are there between two feelings. Oh, where do I go in this gap? What happens in this gap? Remember, who's asking this question? I'm still at the stand of the body-mind. So, the I thought is asking the question, where do I go in the gap? Can the I thought ever know what happens in the gap? Can any thought know what happens in the gap between two thoughts? No, it cannot. What does the gap mean? Gap means an end of a thought. There is a beginning of a thought, then there is a time till where it plays, and then it ends. Yeah? And then there is a gap, and then the next thought begins. Can the thought know the gap? Can the thought find out what is in the gap? No. What is thought? Thought is nothing but the mind. That is why when you try to comprehend the consciousness from the level of the mind, when you try to intellectually understand it, you cannot understand it. You cannot find it because thought cannot find the end of itself or after the end of itself. How will the thought understand that? You see what I'm saying? Yeah? This is the reason that whenever I take the stand as the body-mind, I cannot understand the consciousness. I cannot understand what is happening in the gap. Yeah? Please remember, I'm still at the stand of the body-mind. I have not taken a step back yet. Now take the stand of the body-mind only and look at the dream state. What is the gap between two dreams? It is the deep sleep state. Yes? The deep sleep is the gap between two dreams. A dream is nothing but thought. Deep sleep is nothing but the gap. Yeah? Dream is nothing but the thought. Deep sleep is nothing but the gap. Can the dream know deep sleep? No. Can the thought know the gap? So this has become very clear, right? That you taking a stand as the body and mind will never be able to understand what happens in the gap. The gap between two thoughts, two perceptions, two sensations, two feelings. Deep sleep is akin to the gap in between two arisings. Means what? Deep sleep is not something that I thought which happens only in the night, maybe from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. or just 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's all I have deep sleep. Otherwise, there's dreams and then there is the waking state. That was my assumption. This is simply a conditioning, a label that I put somewhere on the painting. Deep sleep is akin to the gap in between two arisings, which happens during the day. So many times you are in a state when there are no thoughts. Where are you? In the gap. And that gap is akin to the deep sleep state. Yes. So now I have come to this understanding. I cannot say that waking state starts at 6 a.m. and goes till 11 p.m. No. Just those thoughts and feelings and perceptions and sensations, only those are the waking state. In between them, those gaps are the deep sleep state, which happens with open eyes. I go into the gap. So now how do I know that there is consciousness or awareness in the gap? You will say, I understand my waking state is the arising. And when the arising disappears in that gap, that is equal to deep sleep. So I understand that deep sleep is not only at night. But how do I understand that in this gap between two arisings during the waking state, that my so-called waking state that I had labeled, how do I know there is consciousness experiencing itself? How do I know it is the deep sleep state? Again, check if it is the mind that wants to know, if it is thought that wants to know. Can thought go to the gap? Thought cannot go to the gap. Thought cannot understand the state of no thought. Yes, the gap is the state of no thought because the thought has arisen, played and dissolved. When it has ended, the gap has begun. So this is the state of no thought. Can the thought know the state of no thought? No, mind cannot go to that. Mind cannot go to the state of no mind. Thought cannot go to the state of no thought. So can I go beyond the mind? Yeah, that's when you take your stand as the awareness. Step back. What is there in my direct experience beyond the mind? There is just the sense of being. Yeah, some people still see it as the sense of I am, where the I is still there. And some people have recognized that there are moments when there is no I. It is just called the sense of being. Yeah. Oh, it is a background on which the mind arises. It is beyond the mind. Can I take one more step behind? Let me see. Can I go one more behind? Oh no, this is it. There is no behind. I cannot go behind. So this is what I am. I cannot see it, I cannot taste it, I cannot touch it, I cannot smell it, I cannot hear it. This gives me proof it is beyond the mind. Yeah? This gives me proof that I cannot perceive it, but that it can perceive the mind. Oh, that means I am that. How can I be that which I am perceiving? I am perceiving sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought, perception, sensations. Means I am perceiving the body and the mind. Means I am that background. Let me stay there. I stay there as the witness. I stay there as the sense of being. Just stay there. It's just empty. There's nothing. Can I ever say that this sense of being had disappeared all my life? I suddenly found it at this age in an Advaita class. No, it was always there. Can I say that I experience the disappearance and appearance and disappearance of thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions? Do they appear and disappear? Yes, they appear and they disappear. But this sense of being is always there. Aha, this is the background on which they appear and disappear. I am that background on which they appear and disappear. This sense of I am has always been there. Even in deep sleep, even if I say I experience nothing in deep sleep, who is saying I experience nothing? It is that blank background on which there was no arising. That is what is saying there was an absence of things. I am experiencing no thing in deep sleep. If it was not so, you would not know the existence of deep sleep. You would not know there's something like this happening also. You would just shut off and then you would shut on. And you wouldn't know that you shut off and you shut on. You wouldn't know the existence of a state called deep sleep. You know of it. Each one of us knows of the state called deep sleep. Who knows? I am that background that knows. When thought tries to understand deep sleep, it cannot know it because it is after the end of thought that deep sleep state begins. That is why thought cannot go there. That is why the mind cannot understand it. So continue staying as the background, the sense of being, the sense of I am. See, it is absolutely empty. It's void. That is who I am or what I am. From here, if you see, you can recognize pure consciousness is the bigger state. This void is the bigger state. This is like experiencing the deep sleep state while being awake. And if a thought is arising, it is just like a wave. If Ekta's voice arises as a perception of sound and disappears, it's just like a wave that arises and disappears in this void. Thought cannot understand this void. Only the void can perceive the thought. If I can perceive the thought arising and falling, if I can perceive the sound of a voice arising and falling, I am this background. I am this void. Thought cannot know the background. Only I, the background, can know myself. I am not the thought because I can clearly perceive the thought. So, mind cannot experience me. I experience the mind. I am not the mind. I am the one experiencing the thought dancing. That is the mind dancing. That thought that is dancing cannot experience me. It cannot know me, the background. When the mind is at a loss to understand this background, but knows that there is some gap, something is happening. I don't know what the gap is. What does it label the gap as? What is the duration between one thought and the second thought called when you take the stand as body-mind? It's time. The distance between two events has been labeled as time. And who has done that? The mind has put that label. Thought just knows the beginning of the thought and the end of the thought. It knows the beginning of the next thought and the end of the next thought. So it tries to jot these 4 points and says, now draw a line. Oh, there is a gap. This is time. Do you see that? Yeah. Mind puts the label of time because it cannot understand the gap, cannot understand consciousness. Yeah. So we can say that mind only understands objects. And as consciousness is not an object, it cannot perceive consciousness. So it gives a name to what it cannot perceive as time. Yes, thought has objectified consciousness and has given it the label of time. Similarly, what does perception do? Perception of sight. It does not have the capacity to perceive after the end of the perception. It knows the perception arose of sight, it stays and it ends. It doesn't know what happens after. It cannot possibly recognize that. Perception does not comprehend what is in the gap. Yeah, let's take an example. This is the book and this is the Kindle. First, look at the book. Only look at the book. Can you see the perception of the book arises? Your eyes are pointing towards the book. The focal point is the book. You know that your vision is only thumb-sized HD. The rest is all faded around. Can you notice that when you're looking at the book, the Kindle is in the faded region of your vision? Yeah? Don't look at the Kindle. Just look at the book right now. Yeah? Only the book is visible at thumb size. Only a thumb size version is in HD, and that also about 1 arm's length from you. Keep, if the computer is at an arm's length. Now move your perception to the Kindle. Did you notice your eyes move? Means your focal point moved. Means a new perception arose. Look back at the book. Did you notice your eyes move? That means the focal point moved. That means it's a new perception. Look back at the Kindle. Yeah, your eyes moved means the focal point is new. It's a new perception. Do you get it? That perception only understands the beginning of a perception and the end of the perception. Yes? Can the perception understand the gap that is there between the book and the Kindle? It does not understand that. Perception cannot comprehend the gap. So perception labels the gap between two perceptions as space. Yeah? Basically, the mind that does not understand the gap between two perceptions, it labels the gap between two perception of the Kindle and perception of the book as space. This gap is space. Yeah. The mind does not understand that the gap is the reason for the continuity of perception. The mind does not understand that the gap is the reason for the continuity of thought. Gaps are not understood by perception or thought, because perception or thought only understand objects. Mind only comprehends objects. So it cannot comprehend the background. Are you getting this? Yeah. So perception objectifies consciousness and labels it as space. Thought objectifies consciousness and labels it as time. Time and space both are just an idea. Just an idea that appears in the mind. In your direct experience, you can never ever step into the past or step into the future and prove the existence of time. Yeah? Similarly, you can never step into the there and step into the here of space. You cannot divide space. You cannot say this space and that space. So again, labels. Yeah, you cannot really prove the existence of anything called space in direct experience. You cannot prove the existence of anything called time in direct experience. Yeah, for example, if we were to read this book 1 page per day, yeah, there are 530 pages. Yeah, if I read 1 page per day, the mind goes through 530 days. Yeah, so the mind is going through time and reading this entire book through time. Time exists only for the mind. In reality, I have all the 530 pages right here, right now. The entire story, the entire book is present here and now. Yeah, that is the meaning of the eternal now. It is present here, everything, right here, right now. Yeah, it is actually eternity. But from the point of view of the mind, which does not understand the background of consciousness, it appears to be time. It calls it time. It's only an appearance, not real. Yeah? Similarly, what is really infinity, again, it cannot be comprehended by the mind. Yeah? So from the point of view of the mind, it is labeled as space. Again, merely an appearance, not real. Time, space, perception, thought, everything is simply consciousness. It is not possible to have any experience other than consciousness, outside consciousness. Now, if you ask the dream character, the body, mind, personality in that dream, for it is that waking state, it will say only this waking state is real. Dream and sleep, no, whatever, something goes wrong. That's not real. My real state is the waking state. Yeah, the waking state sees eternity as time and infinity as space. Yeah, the waking state sees eternity as time and infinity as space. Now, what is eternity and infinity? Nothing other than consciousness. If you ask the dreamer's mind in the dreaming state, it will say only dream state is real. When you are dreaming in the night and you're like so consumed by that dream, that becomes real for you. Have you noticed that? That time you're the dreamer and that dreaming state is your waking state. Yes, because you have completely got consumed. So which is real? This waking state is real or that dream state in the night is real? Ashtavakra says, Janaka, none of them. Both are illusions. Yeah, none of them are real. Both are illusions. If you really want to know the truth, Ashtavakra says, if you really want to know the truth, who should you ask? Not the waking state, not the dream state. You ask the pure consciousness, this background that I am. And does the consciousness speak? No, you can just be it. Be the consciousness. Be the background. Yeah. This diversity of things, multiplicity of things, all illusion. Beautiful illusion, yeah, but illusion. In the deep sleep, there is an absence of this diversity and multiplicity. Yeah, that illusion has taken a pause. It's like pausing the movie. It's not over yet. Yeah, immediately it comes into play. This cannot be real. This movie playing, pausing, playing, pausing, playing, pausing. There is more. Oh, there is the background on which this movie plays. That is reality. Reality is neither something nor nothing. Yeah? Don't try to think about it. Don't try to logically get there. You can only be there. It cannot be perceived because only your mind is trying to perceive. So if you have reached here, you will recognize that consciousness forgets itself. It becomes thought, feeling, sensation, perception, does drama. The moment it remembers itself, again I rest. And when consciousness is resting within itself, that is called pure consciousness. Yeah? In reality, there is only consciousness. So that is the summary of chapter 1 through 5.